Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Well, man, you get your gun. Anything you can do, I can do better. And of course, the woman wins in the end. That's part of the course. That's always what happens. So there we go. We're a day past Valentine's Day. We got our debate show here ready. Someone's already tuned in to view us, which is excellent. You know, there's been some broadcasters over my lifetime that I consider really good. I mean, you go John Madden, you can go to, Pat Summerall. This guy was kind of arrogant. A lot of people didn't like him. Some people liked him, some people didn't like him. He hung out with Muhammad Ali, late 60s, early 70s. He called the highlights on the Monday Night Football, of course, every Monday, all the games. And that was really not being done either. And I think he was even, Jack, you'll remember this probably better than me. I think he was at the World Series when Reggie Jackson hit those 3 home runs, correct?
Yeah, he was the broadcaster. Yeah, I mean, say he was at the World Series. I mean, I was at the World Series when Reggie Jackson hit the 3 homers, and we're not analyzing myself and a lot of other people. Yeah, and when you say hung out with Muhammad Ali, he didn't really hang out with Muhammad Ali. I mean, he broadcast his fights. Howard Cosell, was with him in the studio. As far as the NFL, he did more than the highlights. He was part of the original broadcast team with Frank Gifford and Don Meredith when Monday Night Football became a phenomenon. It caught the nation by storm because this was before cable TV, and it was like the highest rated show, not so much for the games itself. Obviously, the NFL games were important, but because of the entertainment value, that they brought to Monday Night Football, and in the 3 different personalities in the booth. There was Frank Gifford, who would be the straight man, and then there'd be the opposites in Don Meredith and Howard Cosell, and they'd kind of going at it a little bit. But Cosell never felt completely comfortable in the booth, even though you couldn't tell it, because Gifford and Meredith were really best of friends, extremely close. And Cosell was a little bit of an outsider to the two. So on a personal level, when the game would end, Gifford and Meredith would go out, and they wouldn't go out with Cosell. So you can imagine, Cosell's feelings in that regard. But Monday Night Football, when it first came into existence, it was really, really big for a lot of years. It's not so big now. Now it's just another game. It's a game that's on Monday night. You could argue Sunday Night Football is bigger than Monday Night Football, So that's what it is.
Well, James, I know, of course, Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith, a lot of people hate him. A lot of people, listen to him. And sort of, I think Cosell kind of set the stage, or I'm not saying he copied Cosell, but Cosell was not an athlete. He was a journalist like Stephen A. Smith. He wasn't really an athlete. I think he played basketball and scored 2 points in the season or something crazy like that. So he wasn't really an athlete either. And it was similar. It's similar in the way that Cosell had other shows besides Money and boxing and Major League Baseball too. He did have his own show. But similar. So that gives you an idea of what Cosell was back then, before there was Facebook and before there was, social media for the most part.
I mean, it sounds like he's a pioneer, of course, of his particular genre of work. I mean, opened the doors for the likes of people like Bob Costas, other journalists who were sports. Who was it? The guy just passed. I can't think of his name. Greg Gumbel. People like that. But I only seen or clips and, of course, portrayals in movies of Howard Cosell. Of course, I'm not old enough to have really witnessed a lot of these things live, like you guys have been able to see. But a lot of famous things I hear, it seems like boxing would have been more of his speed because of the things that are more popular. I didn't know he did baseball, and I just knew a little bit about him doing football. But what I've heard and what I've seen were about boxing, and he actually, the fights like that I've actually watched, on YouTube, mind you, has he kept, not just the fight kept you interested, but he kept you interested in watching as well. I mean, obviously, particularly that famous line, down goes the George Foreman versus Joe Frazier fight, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. That's everybody, almost a lot of younger people even know that. It just seems to be synonymous, not with just boxing, but with sportscasting as well. And so I would say, from what I know, it seems like boxing is probably more what he was best at.
I'd agree with that. The reason why I know he was in the booth with Frank and Danny Don and other people too came in and out. All the way, I remember Fran Tarkenton being in the booth with him. But the reason why I mentioned the highlights is he would sit back with a cigar. He wouldn't have no sheet of stats or anything. He would just call it as the highlights went off, which was pretty unique. And that's why I brought that up. Jack, do you think Howard Cosell, if he was in his prime today, would still be doing some kind of sports, a show of his own or something like that?
Television was a lot different than Howard Cosell would do the local sports report in New York on ABC when he was at the height of his powers. And it was, the whole sports medium was like so much different because we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have these talk shows, even though Howard Cosell had a radio show that went national. There was no such thing as ESPN and putting on, all the, you didn't have the same outlet quite, but it was Cosell's personality. He was one of the more disliked guys, it should be pointed out. I mean, I could say a ton of stuff, but we're limited in the amount of time. And, no offense, James, but it should have been something. I should have been taking that segment a few minutes because I lived through Howard Cosell's era, fully understand 100% of what he was about. So you were trying to get a feel for it because you weren't around at that time. So, but he was one of the more disliked guys. He had a big feud with Dick Young in the New York Daily News. And I remember Dick Young after a baseball game, and baseball was Dick Young's specialty, the columnist of the New York Daily News. It was funny. He writes down the headline, "Howie Exposed." He says, "This shows Howard Cosell knows nothing about baseball." And Dick Young says, "Everyone knows baseball. They don't know football, but everyone understands baseball." and Cosell was exposed at how little he knows over some remarks, and they'd go back and forth. And Cosell would basically, I don't think that's funny, Richard, right now, because I was serious, what I was saying. But let's move on. Let's move on that, basically. But I think he made his highest mark on boxing, the call with Frazier, down goes Frazier. But there'd be a lot of hypocrisy with Howard Cosell as well. At the end of his career, he became anti-boxing. He called for it to be abolished. This was after the Larry Holmes Tex Cobb fight. He just got disgusted with the sport, and he tried to make himself to be a man of the highest principle, but he collected all this money and all this fame from boxing. And then at the end of his career, he turns his back on it and tries to come off as an honorable man, by doing so. So there was a lot of hypocrisy. And Howard Cosell generally wasn't liked by people at the end of his career. He just wasn't a popular guy. He wasn't really a nice guy. Someone in the media who I know, a great writer, who wrote it perfectly about Howard Cosell. He put on, yes, he was important, and yes, he did good things. I just wish he'd been nice about it. And that, I guess, summed up Howard Cosell.
If I'm not mistaken, Cosell also did the Olympics. He not only the boxing, but the Olympics itself, Jack. He was there during the when the Palestinians took the Jewish athletes.
Well, he didn't do it. No. He was bitter, Howard Cosell, about that, because Jim McKay made the call on that tragedy, and he faced the nation, and Jim McKay did a brilliant job, on how he handled it. Howard Cosell wanted to handle that big news story, but Rue Knowledge, in charge of ABC Sports and later news, had Jim McKay handle it and not Howard Cosell. So Howard Cosell was kind of bitter. He wanted that too. He also wanted to do the Ali Frazier fight, the first fight, the fight of the century, but that went to Don Dunphy as the lead analyst. Yeah. But if you had to say who the single greatest sportscaster was in history, not so much how he was behind the mic per se, but for the impact, it would be Howard Cosell.
All right. I think that's all I got on him. Let's see, double check last thing. Oh yeah, he used to always say, "Telling it like it is." That was his key phrase.
Oh yeah, he'd say,
telling it.
He'd go like that. This is Howard Cosell reporting. His voice was annoying to people. And he'd say, "This is Howard Cosell telling it like it is." Yeah, And he didn't have a lot of friends in the media. He wasn't really so liked, and the print media especially would put him down. And his response would be, "Ask them what they're getting paid." Meaning in comparison to him, because he was making the big money as a broadcaster. He wasn't liked. He was, he wasn't liked, and by all accounts, he really wasn't a nice guy. He had a special relationship with Ali. Then he tried to cultivate a similar relationship with Sugar Ray Leonard. How could someone try to latch onto a star, okay, a big star, and have a routine going with the star, be in his coattails? Cosell's saying, well, he made Ali, and Ali's thinking he made Cosell. It would be like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice arguing who made the other. And it just was, I would think that Ali was a bit more important to Cosell than vice versa, but Ali loved playing off Cosell, and Ali liked Cosell.
Yeah, he did.
Cosell, and really did. I think Cosell liked Ali, but Ali was more important to Cosell for how he could benefit Howard, benefit his career, even though he liked him. But I think Ali's just the opposite. I think Ali didn't even think how Cosell could benefit him. He was just humored by Howard Cosell. Yeah. Like at the press conference before the first Frazier Ali fight. Ali says, what was at the sound of the bell, Frazier's going to get held, and I'm going to go jump out of the ring and take on Howard Cosell, like using his poetry and all. And Ali would fake like he would be taking the wig off Cosell's head,
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta ask Jack a question. You as a sports writer, in your long tenured history that you've been in the business, would you rather be remembered as a liked person or a revered person, respected, well respected?
I don't know. I think at the end it doesn't matter, like you get older. I mean, who cares? Generations move on. I was thinking of this the other day. I just mentioned Muhammad Ali. Think of how iconic Muhammad Ali was, especially to black people. Think about that. But during the time, a few years ago, the controversy with taking a knee, the anthem, Ali tried to make peace. All it would have taken for Ali to make one remark that would be out of place for black people to turn on him, white people to turn on him, okay? People turn on a dime. You could be iconic, a legend. You could have the greatest reputation, and it could go down the drain over one, minor thing in reality, like Michael Strahan is standing there. So he didn't put his hand over his heart. He wasn't thinking of that. His father was in the military, and people were looking to give Michael Strahan a hard time. So I think all Ali would have had to do is say one nice thing about President Trump at the time, saying, "Oh, he was really nice to me," or whatever. If he would ever say that, and people would have turned on him. So as far as being remembered for whatever, it's like I don't know. I think people create narratives however they want to do it. But to answer your question, whether you'd like to be liked or respected, it's like, I think if you're respected, I don't think you're disliked. If you're respected, that's my feeling. I mean, you might not be liked, but you're not disliked. But you can be liked and not respected.
True.
Absolutely.
So I think respected would be the word. What about you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, I prefer to be respected. I mean, I've learned, I used to want to be liked all the time, but you get kicked in the rear end sometimes from that. And I think it's a matter of just like treating someone as a golden rule, treating somebody like you want to be treated. And I'd rather be respected versus being liked, because at the end of the day,
Look at coaches. There's so many coaches who are liked, and the players want the coach to come back. But meanwhile, the team's losing, and there's not tight discipline. So in reality, they like the coach, but they don't really respect them that much, as opposed to another coach who they might not like, but they respect them, and they're going to play harder for them and put out a little more. So I guess the word's just respected a little more. But Howard Cosell, was he respected? I'm not sure how much he was respected by his brethren in the media. He was so intensely disliked by a lot of people. I mean, he really was, but he got ratings. People watched him, and they tolerated Cosell more. And Cosell once made a remark about, I think it was Alvin Garrett, Washington Redskin running back, that was controversial, that got him in trouble, during the game. And so, things could get thrown away on one remark, and sometimes it could be taken out of context. Like with Drew Brees, a New Orleans Saint legend. No one was more respected in New Orleans than Drew Brees. At one point, you would agree with that, right, James?
absolutely.
Yet they were about to drive Drew Brees out of town over one remark he made, which wasn't, in reality, how bad was his remark? He said,
I stood by him. I stood by him during that time, because I'm like, you can't just throw away everything just because of, and then at the same time, a lot of things may be out of context, and a lot of things may be out of ignorance. You got to really look at the full scope. So I still love Drew Brees. So I mean, we're human.
a remark could come out of your mouth the wrong way, and people are going to want to jump on it, and they won't allow you to backtrack. They act like they're so righteous.
Well, I knew this would take most of the show because, again, I know how interesting the life of Howard Cosell was. But let's push on. So James Cook, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, he's coming off his rookie contract. He wants $15.1 million a year to play for the Buffalo Bills. I have imagined, I think I know what James is going to say, and I might disagree with him. So why don't you go first, James?
Look, there's just too many examples of what running backs get paid, and they're drastically underpaid. So James Cook wants to be a higher paid guy, which he deserves a raise. He definitely deserves a raise. But he had 1,009 yards in 17 games. He had 16 rushing touchdowns, but he also had two receiving touchdowns. But from scrimmage, everything was like 1,250 or 1,260 yards or so total. You have a guy in Saquon Barkley that had 2,000, and he broke the record total of Terrell Davis' record, his regular season and postseason record of 2,500 yards total. And he still had to get 15 million a year. He had to get incentives to add into his contract. His base salary is 13.5 million. So I really think that the 15 million. I mean, obviously, if I'm a running back, I'm going to ask for it. All they can do is tell me no. I mean, so I'm not going to not ask for that amount of money. But should he get paid that amount of money? I think maybe if he sets the market, yes, that will increase Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, those guys that'll get them more incentive to become higher paid because they're better running backs than James Cook. They're better. And so at this point, I don't think he deserves that amount of money, not 15.
Well, James Cook, you said in 17 games he got 1,009 yards, but that was only on 207 carries. So he's averaging over 5 yards a carry. Also had 32 receptions for 258 yards and 16 TDs. And we sit here, me and Jack, we'll sit here and we'll say, well, the running backs are underpaid, underused, are not, should be paid maybe as a wide receiver instead of a running back. Saquon Barkley is a great example. And you know, and I know he would make more than Saquon and he would make more than Derrick Henry. But where do we start? Is this where we should start? And maybe this starts getting other running backs paid that should be paid. And really, who was the weapon for Buffalo this year? I mean, what was the big receiver? I don't know. I think it was James Cook. I think he was Josh Allen's main weapon this year. So 15.1 million a lot? I don't know. But it's still far away from what T. Higgins is going to get paid. And these other wide receivers are going to get paid. So I think this is where you start. And I think Buffalo should pay him the 15.1 million. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, you put it very well, Mac. I mean, running backs are underpaid compared to wide receivers by far. But what Buffalo's doing is looking at what the other running backs are getting paid and trying to pay him accordingly. And they're probably going to figure 15.1 is a little high. That's more than Saquon Barkley's getting paid. But if James Cook gets that, now what are the Eagles going to do with Saquon Barkley? They're going to feel pressure to extend him, and Barkley's agents are going to say, don't report to camp. Don't do this, don't do that. If I'm Saquon Barkley, you know what I do? I look at all the money I've made my NFL career. He's made enough to live comfortably the rest of his life. I let the Eagles know, unless I get a contract that's somewhat in line with wide receivers, I'm retiring, and mean it, and be ready to retire. I would really call it bluff. Could you imagine Saquon Barkley actually did retire? He's not with the Eagles next year because he felt the running backs are being disrespected. I've got to make a statement for all running backs. I'm done with football now. Wow, that would shake up the whole structure, something bad. But of course, I don't think Barkley would want to retire. So, that's not going to happen. And running backs are undervalued. They're undervalued what they're getting paid. So, yeah, James Cook is worth the money he's asking for. I hope he gets it. But in the running back scale compared to other running backs, no, he's not quite worth it compared to what they're getting paid at the current time. But I hope he does get it. And I question whether Buffalo is going to up the ante. But like I said, I hope they do because this is going to put pressure on the other teams, to start paying running backs what they're worth.
I mean, if I'm Saquon Barkley, I'm rooting for him. I'm saying, go get your money, man. If I'm Derrick Henry, I'm rooting for him. Go get that money.
Well, those guys sign deals, Max. So, it only affects them if their current teams are going to extend them.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to extend Saquon Barkley anyway, but within limits. Saquon Barkley didn't make great money. He signed a 3-year deal for $37 million, $26 million guaranteed. So what might the Eagles do? Maybe the Eagles will extend them an extra year at $18 million. Maybe if the Eagles in an extremely generous, great mood, which I doubt, they'll extend them a $20 million deal for 1 year. Compare that to CeeDee Lamb, who's getting $38 million a year. Give me a break. I mean, you could take 3 CeeDee Lambs; they're not worth 1 Saquon Barkley.
The money is going to be in guaranteed money. It's going to be guaranteed money. So, and I can almost guarantee you this upcoming off season, Saquon's sitting out. There's no way he's going to have to depend on $15 million in incentives. I mean, get extra money in incentives to get to $15 million. He's going to try to get more guaranteed money. I'd be surprised or shocked if he didn't do that. But I agree with you, Jack, that he's definitely going to be rooting for James Cook to get more money. Because you look back when he's with the Giants, he was on social media talking about how undervalued the running backs were and that they should get together and pretty much boycott. But I just, at this current state, like you said, I can't see James Cook being worth the amount of money in comparison to the other backs. And then also the owners are going to look at what happened to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's the highest paid running back, period, right now, and he didn't even play last season, maybe a couple of games.
But you knew he was hurt before, James. But you knew Christian McCaffrey, was injury riddled throughout his career. That's the difference. Anyone could get hurt. And then you could say, oh, what a bad deal. Well, he's 1 injury away and we gave him all that money and he can't play. I get that. But McCaffrey did have an injury history. So they were taking a chance in that regard.
See, to me, it's all about what you're worth to the team, right? I mean, Saquon Barkley, great running back, but you've got Jalen Hurts. You've got A.J. Brown, you've got Smith, you've got Goddard on the Ravens. Of course, you got Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers will be back next year. They got a pretty good tight end. What does Buffalo really have?
Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, guys like that. Not as good as the guys you mentioned.
No. So, I mean,
I'm going to say I agree with Mac that the next value player next to Josh Allen is James Cook. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if they use them more against Kansas City in the playoff, who do they play in the playoffs? Was it Kansas City or Baltimore? I hope
Kansas City.
They use them more in the playoffs. They probably win that playoff game instead of trying to throw the ball all over the place. That was crazy. I don't know what they were thinking. Had a big first half. I remember that. Aaron Rodgers, of course. Aaron Rodgers I don't know how I've spent like almost 2 years talking about Aaron Rodgers, but with the Jets letting him go, Aaron Rodgers, I think, has two options. But I want to hear what you guys think first. Jack, it's your quarterback. Who do you think? Where do you think he's going to be?
Oh, I said so during this season, a while back, mid-season, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I said it a while ago. I'm not saying it first now. I said it long ago. That's why I could see him trending to, because I didn't see Mike Tomlin, I figured, was going to be the coach of the Steelers going forward, despite some discontent in their fan base. Pittsburgh doesn't fire coaches. And I didn't see him coming back with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. I mean, if Justin Fields was going to be the quarterback for the Steelers, he would have been it already. They weren't going to essentially bench him for Russell Wilson as soon as Wilson was ready. And Wilson isn't quite the answer. And their veteran team, Pittsburgh, they're in a win-now mode. They're not thinking so much about, developing a quarterback, having their quarterback in the future. They're very much of a now team. And Aaron Rodgers is obviously the ultimate now quarterback. You don't think of the future with him. So, and Mike Tomlin has viewed Aaron Rodgers for years and years and years when he was in his prime. So to him, he's getting, maybe a semi-elite quarterback still, the Tomlin's thinking. And the Steelers are ready to perhaps win. They do win every year. They just don't take the next step in the playoffs. So I could see it being a situation that Rodgers is going to want to go to, as opposed to the Raiders, who really aren't going to go anywhere next year. Tennessee, who's really not going to go anywhere next year. So it's a nice fit, Rodgers, to the Steelers. That's why I see him going.
How about you, James? What do you think?
Hey, it's coming down to New Orleans now. I'm just kidding. I think there's really not much to really choose from. I mean, Pittsburgh is one of the better options, where he can be at least semi-protected. But if he goes to Cleveland, what I've heard, or to Las Vegas, what I've heard, I don't really see much of a really good option for him. I almost see the couch, to be honest with you. I see retirement. I don't see, because you have to think about a perspective from him. Do I want to get beat up at this juncture in my life? Or, is it really worth it to try to go through that grind in my 40s, to just day in, day out, and, training camp and all this. I mean, he's got to go to his dark place here and there more often because he's becoming beat up a lot more. So I just don't think, I think maybe the couch might be the best, that might be the best offensive line for him, is to sit down and relax and call it a day. And as brilliant as he is, I mean, he might be off his rocker a little bit, but he's a brilliant guy. I could see him transitioning. I mean, as we saw him on Jeopardy, he did great on that. He has a lot of options to maybe go into media, sitting there talking.
But if he wants the quarterback, what's the best team for him? No,
I don't see anybody else. I'm gonna say what you just said, Pittsburgh. Typically, we try to debate here, but I can't debate Oakland or Cleveland. Those are terrible spots. Those are not even significant issues. So, I mean, I thought the best team for him would be just at his house. I just don't see any other option.
If he went to the Steelers, I would think they would get Devontae Adams too, and him and Pickens. He would have a couple of elite receivers to throw to as well. And if Najee Harris might not be back with the Steelers, he's a free agent. But if he is, there's top flight running back as well. So. But you're right. You mentioned certain teams like the Saints. Who would he have to throw the ball to the Saints? Olive? Yeah.
Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Yeah. And then you have a new coach that likes to throw the ball. I mean, besides, but I was just kidding about that. I don't think none of these teams, even Jack, Matt, I hate to even bring your team up, but the Giants wouldn't be a good fit either. It's just not a team that Rodgers needs to be on needs to be semi-ready or ready to go.
James, you make an interesting point now, mentioning the Giants. this might be the appeal. Aaron Rodgers reportedly really likes, the tri-state area, Jersey, going into Manhattan, same stadium to play in. He has all this familiarity with the stadium, the locker. He's just the whole thing. Playing at MetLife Stadium still. Will any team put up with him at Egypt instead of camp? But he's not going to. I don't think he's going. He went on a little hiatus, Rick, for like 3 days or so. Was it really a big deal? I don't think anyone cared in June, but they keep talking this narrative in the media and this and that. The reason the Jets did poorly is what they did on the field. They couldn't close games out. Aaron Rodgers couldn't finish drives. He'd move the ball up and down the field, and it would result in them either going for field goal or incomplete pass on 4th down. That was the story of the year. I don't think any outside noise was going on, that hampered the team at all. It's a mystery why they was so bad, the Jets last year. But there were so many close losses too. Like the Chiefs won all these close games. The Jets lost all these close games. I mean, that was the difference. And the Jets quit in certain games. I got to be honest about it. Didn't really put out all the time.
You guys are missing the easiest one. If it's snake, it would have bit you.
Oh my goodness.
Minnesota Vikings.
I think that was in the back of my head, but my question is, does Kevin O'Connell want him?
Does he want to win? I mean, look at your receivers. Jefferson, Addison, great tight end. Running back Jones, if he plays again next year, it's a good running game. Great defense. And and I'm not saying this because Farr went there. Even though Farr did do good with the Minnesota Vikings. They almost went to the Super Bowl that 1 year under him. But I think that would be perfect for Aaron Rodgers. What were the Vikings? 14-3. They lost their last 2 games and the playoff game or something like that. They would have lost those games with Rodgers. So Richard,
right.
You got a new quarterback. What?
I said that before, but I rescinded that because of what Aaron Rodgers is, what he brings to the table. Does some coach or young coach want to tolerate that? And I'm thinking like, wow, I would prefer not to. Right. I would prefer not to have a guy that's old and a little bit long in the tooth and come with baggage, even if he is a 4-time MVP. I just like, man, I kind of like what I had in Sam Darnold. I want to see if we can expound on that. If we can't get him a good deal, we got a young guy in the bag, and McCarthy. You don't know exactly what he is, but I'd rather get another bridge quarterback than to deal with the headache that you might have to deal with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, you mentioned J.J. McCarthy. It would appear that he's going to be the Viking quarterback in the future, but next season, I could see him on the bench for the year because last year he was injured. So the 1 year he would have been on the bench and all, he lost that year, basically. So, but Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings could make a lot of sense, when you think of their receivers like Jefferson, Addison, but Aaron Rodgers does command a lot of power, and I'm not it's personality to a large extent, but it's a little more than that. He has overwhelming football knowledge. He has a way he wants to do things as a player. And it's not because he's a malcontent, He has his way of doing things. And I've said this all along on past shows. If you have a veteran quarterback, and who's been highly successful, he's more capable of calling his own plays than an offensive coordinator is for him. He knows what he wants to do. He knows what makes him more comfortable. I'm for letting him call his own game and just helping him, on offense. But the way the NFL is set up, all quarterbacks have to take complete direction from plays called into the huddle. but I think the quarterbacks know better. What makes an offensive coordinator smart? As soon as he retires, he's more capable. If Aaron Rodgers retired now and became an offensive coordinator, would that make him smarter now? But that's the logic we use. Let certain quarterbacks, let them call their own plays. They know what they're doing in the huddle. The players have a good feel for what they want to get done. Just basically game plan with them.
But this is where I see Kevin O'Connell. I see Kevin O'Connell as a guy who mentors quarterback. He's a quarterback whisperer. Can you whisper to an older guy who probably, like you just said, he knows what he wants? What if they bump heads? I mean, I don't think Kevin O'Connell is going to look at Aaron Rodgers and say he's coachable. He's that type of player where I can tell him that this is my philosophy and this is what I want. And Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to be that guy. I mean, you just look at how he's dealt with the guy in Green Bay when he was there. I think they drafted a quarterback for a reason because they knew, first of all, Aaron Rodgers is getting a little older, but at the same time, it's the other stuff that came along with it. I agree with you that Aaron Rodgers does.
It wasn't because he was older. I mean, it was because he was older. It wasn't because of his attitude they drafted Jordan Love. That wasn't it at all. I mean, but I also think with Kevin O'Connell, he has Daniel Jones. So I think it would give Kevin O'Connell this great satisfaction if Daniel Jones could be successful under him. It would make Kevin O'Connell look good that Daniel Jones couldn't get it done with the Giants for the most part, outside of one good year that he had with them. And if he brings Daniel Jones back and Daniel Jones plays well for him, on top of Sam Darnold, him making a difference in Sam Darnold's career makes Kevin O'Connell look like a genius. So I think he's kind of aware of that, Kevin O'Connell, that he's willing to take that challenge. I think Sam Darnold will be offered a chance to be the quarterback next year, maybe on a one-year deal at reasonable money to the Vikings. I don't think they'll franchise tag him at $41 million a year. But if Sam Darnold, who got paid $10 million last year, is willing to come back on a one-year deal, $25 million, they'll guarantee it all, let's say, for 1 year. I think the Vikings would do that for 1 year. You run it back with Sam Darnold.
James, you're the head coach of the Vikings. What do you want to do? You want to look like a genius? Do you want to be a quarterback whisperer? Or do you want to win football games? I want to win football games. I'm going to put the best guy in there that's going to win football games. And there is no doubt that Aaron Rodgers is better than Sam Darnold or better than Daniel Jones. There's no doubt. So to me, there's no question.
Based on last year, Sam Darnold was better than Aaron Rodgers last year. And Aaron Rodgers did have, weapons to work with. It's not like he didn't have weapons. He didn't finish. I mean, the Vikings were a better team than the Jets.
Yes.
But obviously, I don't know. A lot of times it's reputation. Aaron Rodgers, the last 3 years, haven't been. Last year he was so-so. Let's say he was so-so, and that's giving him the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't.
Had a good year, passed for over 3,000 yards.
Statistically, you have to finish. He wasn't a finisher.
You can't control what he does.
Matt, his yards about context. A lot of that is coming back, trying to come back at the end of games.
If you look at a lot of interceptions, they're bouncing off people, they're dropping balls. I mean, you saw how frustrated Aaron Rodgers was getting. Now, listen, I'm not a great Aaron Rodgers fan. I'm just saying, I want a quarterback there that I know when it's crunch time is going to win for the most part. I don't want Sam Darnold who fell apart. I want Daniel Jones, who I don't know what the hell Daniel Jones is anymore. I want somebody that I know knows how to win football games.
They got J.J. McCarthy. That's their goal to eventually. If they really are high on J.J. McCarthy, either they're going to trade J.J. McCarthy this offseason before the draft, or he's going to be their quarterback of the future. They're counting on him to be their guy. So someone basically, they want to keep the seat warm for a year. If they come back with Sam Darnold and they win, then great. They'll keep riding Sam to, till whenever, whoever else. But it makes sense what you're saying. It's not far.
Sam's going to the Jets. Darnold's going back to the Jets. That's where he's going.
Jets are probably going to roll with Tyrod Taylor for 1 year, and they're going to draft one of the quarterbacks. If they could get Quinn Ewers or someone. But Tyrod Taylor, who was a leader in the clubhouse and all, even though he was a backup quarterback, the Jets could have a little success with Tyrod Taylor for 1 year as a bridge quarterback. It's not like he's going to be bad. He could be okay. But the danger is he could create an illusion that he should be a guy going forward, and he absolutely shouldn't be.
Jack, would you not want Sam Darnold back to the Jets?
Nah, I'm not overly enthused. I thought he'd have a really good year with the Vikings last year. Sam Darnold can be okay, but I think what they'd have to pay him and everything, it just wouldn't be worth it for what it would mean under the cap and all. No, I'm not crazy about it. I'm really not.
Okay. Ben Simmons, teams keep signing him. I even read something real quick that what's his name? The guy that's always hurt for the Clippers said he's only a part-time player. So, yeah, he said he's only a part-time player. We don't need him. I was thinking about, okay. So anyway, Ben Simmons.
Said he's only a part-time player.
Kawhi Leonard said that. He said they don't need another part-time player. So I don't know.
That's not good. That's like the pot calling the kettle black. You really don't need to say that.
No. You don't need to make a remark. But the truth of the matter is, if Ben Simmons wasn't a big name and he didn't get big money and he was just another NBA guy who was a part-time player, a role player, you'd say, no, he's a darn good role player. He can help our team. He's excellent defensively. He gets assists, gets rebounds. He hardly shoots the ball, but he's a guy who can help a team. Coming off the bench or whatever, is a role player. But because he has a big name and he was projected to be a star at one point, and he flamed out from that, and he got big money, and then he wouldn't be playing. He had all these issues, whether, they were genuine or not. I'll give him the benefit of doubt they were genuine, but that's the problem. He's a big name, and he's never going to be the star that people, thought he could be. And so that's why he's looked down upon.
I look at Ben Simmons like if I'm somebody going to a car lot, a used car lot, a nice luxury used car lot, and I see a BMW M5, and I'm like, from optics, this car looks really good. It's beautiful, streamlined. I get it in to drive it. It handles great. It's got excellent speed, 0 to 60 in maybe 3.5 seconds. And then I don't do my due diligence and look at the car and say, or look at the history of the car and look at the Carfax, look at all the wrecks that this car has been in. And then I say, what was I thinking? I paid all this money and I got this and I didn't do my due diligence and check that. I think a lot of teams probably do see that, but they see that BMW in him. This guy was a number 1 drafted overall pick. He's a playmaker. Be honest with you, he's an excellent playmaker. He plays great defense. He's a triple double waiting to happen. You look at what he just did the other night against Utah. That, mind you, it's against Utah, but it was his debut for the Clippers. Got 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. So he was flirting with a triple double there. You can get this from that guy, but the question is, what are you going to get later on in the season? Is it going to be his back? Is it going to be the mental health issues? There's a lot of things you just don't know what might come along later on, but you're still looking at that BMW when you see it. When you look at the optics, this guy's 6'10", he's fast, he can jump out through the roof, and he's a playmaker. He can pass the ball. Sort of similar. They looked at him as LeBron when he first came in. So that's what you see, and teams want to take a deal on it, but I wouldn't want to pay him a whole bunch of money like Jack said. I just wouldn't want to pay a lot of money for this type of guy.
No, it's funny you mentioned that, James. When he was with the Philadelphia 76ers as a young player, I went to a game at the Barclays Center, see the Sixers play the Nets, and Ben Simmons was unstoppable when he'd get the ball. He keeps scoring. I mean, he was unstoppable. Something happened to him mentally where he just doesn't want to shoot the ball because the idea of missing shots makes him feel like a failure for some reason. You have another player like on the Cavaliers, Jared Allen, who grabs a ton of rebounds. He was actually a former Net. What a bad deal for them to move on from him. He has such a high shooting percentage, but he doesn't shoot that much, but his percentage is great. Some guys, it's just not in their nature to do certain things. But with Ben Simmons, you're right. But it was his first game with the Clippers, I think, where he had that big game. He's inspired. He wants to leave an impression. But he's what he is. He's not going to take a lot of shots. He's hardly going to score. He'll get some rebounds, get some assists. But it is another part-time player. He's not going to be an impact player, but he's an impact name.
Well, I think it could be easy as really there's not 10 good players on a team, right? I mean, you got your 3 or 4 good players, real good players on good teams. But then you go 6 through 10 and they get in and whatever they do, they burn up time. I think that's what Ben Simmons is. I think Ben Simmons is the guy that goes in there and burns up some time and gives somebody a rest. I don't know if he's worth all that money to give people rest. I mean, James could do that, and they probably could pay him like $100,000 to do that.
No, Ben Simmons, Mac. Mac. He does help a team when he's in there. They put him in at a point in the game where he can help. I think it's more than him just giving someone a rest. I don't think that's it. I think Ben Simmons is effective in short intervals. He's a good defender. He's good defensively, so he really does help a team. But it's like in baseball, it's like having a utility player, out there who's going to fill in. It's just something. It gets to a point where we have to give up on a guy as far as him being what we want him to be. Ben Simmons is never going to take it to the next level anymore. He's not going to reach his potential. You have a guy in New Orleans who I kind of wonder whether he's like that. And Zion Williamson, I keep waiting for Zion to break out and be a genuine star, James. And
he's just breaking out of his pants, Jack.
What?
He's breaking out of his pants. He's eating a lot of gumbo down there. It's just the weight issues.
It's still a weight issue with Zion?
To some degree, yes.
Something. Maybe you tell me, should I come to the conclusion to give up on Zion? He's what he is. He's always going to be what he is now. He's never going to be a star. Like the projected star that he was, because he's not, if he hasn't gotten the discipline by now, he's never going to get it. I mean, can I go under that assumption finally?
Look, I heard Charles Barkley say, I think yes, because I think Charles Barkley, he asked the question of Moses Malone and asked him, why wasn't he playing? He said, he asked him literally, he wanted to talk to him. So he came up to his apartment. He said, why am I not playing? He said, because you're fat and lazy. That's exactly what he told him. And that's what Charles said out of his mouth. He said, but I will help you. We'll work on 10 pounds. We'll get 10 pounds now. And then when we get another 10 pounds, we'll work on another 10 pounds. And then Charles said, eventually, that's just what helped him and changed his whole career, the trajectory of his career. But he was able to listen to somebody. I don't know if it's the generation or anything. If he don't have any, he got too many yes people around him and not somebody to say, no, you got to look, you can't do this, man. This is what your career is going to be like. But Charles called him out on the air. Charles called everybody out, but he was no exception. But he called himself out. So I think it was fair to say. And to answer your question, yes, I don't think he's going to be a star unless he makes a change. But it seems like it's too late.
Yeah, we talk about players in all sports not living up to the hype. Trevor Lawrence, right? I mean, will he ever become a good quarterback? some baseball players out there, pitchers that seem to always be hurt or have mental problems too. Yankees having
Well,
no
sometimes
problems.
a guy does put it together. People forget Nolan Ryan was a Met. He was on the Miracle Met 1969 championship team. And they asked Gil Hodges about Nolan Ryan. He was slow to develop. And they talked to him about Nolan Ryan's potential. And Hodges came up with a great line. He said, some guys have potential their whole lives. Meaning, we keep waiting for them, like Zion has potential for this whole career. Ben Simmons has potential for this. But Nolan Ryan did break out.
Yeah.
He became a superstar, Hall of Famer. So some guys can reach their potential, but they've got to want to do it bad enough. They've got to have the hunger. I think with Zion, it's a physical thing in large part and an attitude thing, obviously. I think with Ben Simmons, it's a mental issue.
See, this is why I always think they should pay players for games played. You won't have load management. You'll have guys that will try to get their best health they can. And you want to make money? Play the game.
That's what I can't understand. I'm a big proponent for the modern athletes, the modern players being better than the guys before them. I'm big on that, like the NBA. I think the modern guys are better than the old timers of past, clearly. More athletic, more this, more that. But then I think to myself, a guy like Wilt Chamberlain, he played the same amount of games. He only missed 13 minutes a whole season, and that includes overtime games. And his shoes he wore, what did he wear? Croquettes or Converse? They didn't compare to today's shoes. They ran up and down the court the same amount. Why weren't these guys injured in the past the same way? Why were these guys so durable compared to these clowns of today with their load management?
Now, what I will say to that, Jack, I have to rebuttal that. I know people have got time. I agree with you. While I agree with you about these guys being more durable back in the day with the worst shoes ever, these guys, like you just said a while back, they're a lot more athletic and fast. Scientifically, the body is not meant to do a lot of the things they do at the speed they do it. So they're more prone to injury and risk injury because, look at somebody like Derrick Rose. You've never seen anybody do anything things he was doing at that height, but the knees paid for it. He paid for it, what he was doing. So I think a lot of it is just how fast is the game changed.
They got shoes right now that almost have trampolines inside of them. That's why they can get up over the damn basketball.
That's what Edwin Moses, the hurdlist, said. Yeah, it's like trampoline.
Yes. Come on, man. Let's be honest. All right, folks. Gotcha.
No, I'm going to tell you, you get guys who play schoolyard ball, okay, in the 20s, who constantly are playing games in the schoolyard, who have other jobs, and you give them an 82-game schedule, and just, let them pay all their expenses and give them all $50,000 a year. They would jump at it. And they'd probably play every darn game. They would need load management. They'd want to get in the games. But whatever, that's another topic.
There you go. Folks, thanks for tuning in today. Richard, thanks for all the comments. Thanks for the views, folks, and possible shares later. This is the Sports Debate Show coming every Saturday, 8 a.m. Tomorrow, the big football show and more. Always football news to go through, and we will definitely do that. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., the football show.